Hey, good morning, fam. Had to give my homies a shout out before we get started today. Look, we're going to talk about a very serious topic today. It's suicide. It's been brought to my attention by several of my viewers and some of my friends, letting me know that they're deeply concerned about the increasing numbers of African Americans or American Africans that are committing suicide. Specifically, there are a couple of cases that have recently taken place in Cincinnati, Ohio, hence my Ohio Against the World shout out before we get started. Now, my background is in clinical psychology. I've worked as a clinician for years, worked as a school psychologist. Right now, I do more life coaching than clinical work. I do still do a lot of clinical trainings with students and organizations with their clinical staff. So I'm still very much in touch with the clinical world. And so, I'm in touch with what happens psychologically. I mean, that's just my background. That's what I do. And so I figured like, hey, why not use that expertise to discuss a very real issue that is of deep concern in our communities right now. This is not going to be one of those really short, quick videos. We're going to go a little bit more in depth today. And so it's going to be like the 60-second life coach times, like maybe 5, maybe 6, maybe 7, maybe even 10. All right. So we're looking at up to 10 minutes, but maybe not. So anyway, check this out. So all of us basically know that suicide is when somebody takes their own life, right? That's the basic understanding of suicide. Most of us understand suicide or the methods that people commit suicide, such as gunshots, self-inflicted gunshot wounds. Some people take pills. Some people take another passive route where they would go into the car in the garage and inhale the fumes, the toxic fumes coming out the exhaust pipe. There are many ways that people commit suicide. Some are more obvious than others. The ones I've listed are the obvious ones. There are other ways that people commit suicide. And Sister Joy DeGruy, she first put me on with the concept of suicide by cop or suicide by proxy. And the example that she shared with me is way back in the day. She talked about how there was like a brother would go in to a place that he knows is frequented by off-duty police officers and brandish a firearms, knowing that it's likely that he's going to get shot and killed in that environment. And that was his plan the whole time. Because as she would say, I ain't going out like no punk, right? Not going to take a gun and put it to his own head. Not going to pop pills and kill himself with the intention of dying overdose. Not going to sit in the car and inhale exhaust fumes, but is actually going to go out in a blaze of fire. You can take that same concept of suicide and apply it to a brother or a sister, an individual from one particular neighborhood or one particular gang set, and then they go into a rival gang turf for the purpose of setting it off with the full intention of dying in that process. That is also suicide. And again, those are easy to grasp. It's easy to see that. And then you have this other form of suicide that many people actually participate in, but many don't recognize it because it's a very slow process. It's not a quick, fast suicide. It's not really that obvious form of suicide, but it's still self-inflicted injury that ultimately ends or results in death. That is introducing toxins to the body. Basically not caring for yourself, basically not upkeeping your own health and actually doing things that hinder and impede and damage your health and well-being. So let's say, for example, this ain't no judgment on nobody doing whatever you do. I say whatever floats your boat and finds your lost remote, that's all right, because it's your life, it's your choice. You have to do what you do for you. Now, my only concern is when it involves or impacts me and mine. And at this point, we're not talking about that. I'm just saying that people, for example, who smoke cigarettes, we all know what smoking cigarettes do or what smoking in general does. And I don't have a concern because I'm not doing that. But my concern comes like if I'm out in public, like the other day, my family and I, we were walking out of a building and a lady lit up a cigarette right before she went out the door. And so I looked back to my son and said, hey, hold your breath. And he said, okay. And so he held his breath all the way until we got outside. And when we got out, I told him why. He said, oh yeah, I know, I saw it. And so it's not my concern, do what you do, but when it involves other people, then it's my concern, especially when those other people are me and mine. So anyway, smoking cigarettes can be considered a form of suicide because we know where that ends up. And it has an addiction element to it. So that individual may or may not be able to stop on command. Another thing is heavy alcohol consumption, the heavy consumption and abuse of other drugs. Those two can be considered forms of suicide, albeit slow. So that's a slow walk to death. And I hear you now. Death is inevitable. We're all going to die anyway. We're all going to die of something. That is absolutely true. But the difference that we're talking about here is self-inflicted harm, as opposed to harm that just kind of comes whether accidentally or quote unquote naturally. All right. And so with this whole thing of suicide and the increased rates of suicide, let's get into this aspect of it. When we're talking about our children, youth that wake up one day and decide this will be my last day on earth, that I am going to take myself out today. There's something that has been occurring all the way up until that point that has either been overlooked, has been dismissed, has been minimized by the people in their immediate environment, or even inflicted by the people in their immediate environment. And this child has said, I have to make this decision for myself. And they've done that. Now, there are all type of societal influences that come into play here. Like, I understand that there's a game that some kids are playing right now. It's something to the effect of, will they miss me when I'm gone, or something to that effect. I know I'm messing that up, but y'all know what I'm talking about. It's a game. And I saw a video of a young brother headed to his classmate's funeral. He spoke about how he saw his friend that day in gym class. And then later on, that's the same person is dead, took his own life. And he said he was playing a game. It was some Facebook posts or some social media posts talking about, I wonder what people would do when I'm gone, or how will they miss me, or will they miss me when I'm gone? And the young brother's insight was, you don't know what they're going to do because you're dead. And there's nothing else that you can do in this particular form of life once you've taken your life. So typically we associate suicide with depression or depressed mood. And sometimes people who are on antidepressants, it's not when they're deep down depressed that they often attempt suicide. It's when they take the meds and they begin to get enough energy, their vitality begins to rise again, that they actually attempt or commit suicide. And it's really slick, and it's an interesting dynamic, but it makes sense. When a person is deep down in depression, they often don't have the energy, the motivation, the drive. Well, the motivation might be there, but the drive, the actual energy that's necessary to do it is not there. And so when they start to feel a little bit better, get a little bit more energy, but the thoughts are still ruminating on the deep, dark aspects of life, the things that they are hurting from, the things that are causing them pain, the hopelessness, the despair, then with that combined with the energy now becomes a dangerous cocktail. They have the energy, they have the depressed mood, they have the depressed thoughts, they have the hopelessness, the despair, and now they act on it. And they want to remove themselves from life, but really from the life circumstances. And the hopelessness is what creates the thinking that I need to get out of life, period, because whatever's on the other side has to be better than this. Now, religious belief also plays a big part. Some people believe that when you die, you go to heaven, especially if you've been living a good life. But then there are some religious beliefs that also say that regardless of what your sins are, you still have the opportunity to go to heaven unless you take your own life. And so it's a really deep concept that people are juggling, and basically willing to enter the unknown, death, because the known life is so hard that they're considering whatever's on the other side can't be as bad as this. It's really slick. So what about the increase with our youth? There's so much going on right now in popular culture. There's so much going on with this social media, with these front-facing cameras. People are able to do any and everything these days, and they just put it out there in the world, and whoever stumbles across it has the opportunity to be influenced by it. So right now, our children are dealing with deep levels of identity confusion. And I'm talking sexual identity, I'm talking gender identity, I'm talking racial identity, I'm talking community identity. Many of our children only know their ancestral legacy to be tied to a plantation somewhere, some form of enslavement. They have no idea about the Africans who were here in the North, South, and Central American landmass long before Europeans came this way. They have no idea about the ancient African civilizations and cultures that existed long before their ancestors or some of the people were taken away and enslaved. They have no idea of these things. And so when they think back, and they can go back maybe 1, 2, maybe 3 generations of people known by name, and then they end up on some plantation somewhere, some chains and some shackles in beast mode. And not Marshawn Lynch beast mode. I'm talking beast mode as in being treated as if they're beasts of burden in the field. Now, when you start an individual's identity off there, and it almost automatically sets up a sense of hopelessness, a sense of helplessness, even if you detail the so-called accomplishments that have taken place from the plantation to 2016, where we see our first identifiably African-American president on his way out of office. Now, These are accomplishments, yes. And I've often heard people make a statement about a quote. I've never read the quote myself or heard him say it myself, but there's a quote that's attributed to Malcolm X, El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz, that says that if you stab a man with a 9-inch blade and you pull it out 3 inches, that could be considered progress. And what he's illustrating in that statement is the fact that, yeah, it can be progress, but in that same situation, that cat still has 6 inches of blade in him and is probably bleeding to death. So progress is relative to what's actually going on. So if you put the timeline for our youth and make it broader than plantation origins, you take it back further to the time when they were not slaves or enslaved. When you take it back and show the advances in civilization, and you make this just a matter of fact discussion. And when you as adults and parents, teachers, educators, healers, community organizers, peers, aunties, uncles, grandparents, cousins, kinfolk, crew, gang members, fraternity members, sorority members, co-workers, when you all begin to walk with this level of understanding and you demonstrate this to our youth, it gives them something else to look up to. And not just a young thug and his lovers, not just a rich homie Quan, not just a Silento showing them how to whip and nay-nay. They need other rock solid examples. They need to be able to hold the hand of a grown man and feel the strength in that hand and understand that, yes, we love you. Yes, we have your backs. Yes, we are here. We came before you in order to help you how to navigate, help you to know how to navigate this new life. If you think about a child that's 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, they've only been on this planet for 13 years. That's not a long time. I mean, I looked up and I was like, man, you know, I could think back 20 years and I was living by myself 20 years ago. You know, that's amazing when you could go back 20 years and you're still an adult. You see? So that shows you that 13 years is not a long time. And so when we have babies that have only been here 13 years, 14 years, 15 years, 12 years, we have to understand that all of this is new to them. This world is absolutely new. They have no clue. And unfortunately, they're being filled with a bunch of garbage that's shaping their understanding of themselves, of others, and the situations that they find themselves in. Adults, parents, folks, community, we got to step our game up. Our children should never question whether they're valuable. They should never have to question whether or not they're worth love, whether or not they're worthy of respect, whether or not they're worthy of existing. That should be a non-issue. That should be a non-question. If anything, they should be focusing on how well I can continue the legacy that the adults in my environment are setting up for me. That means that it's up to us, and we got a heck of a job ahead of us, because a lot of us are slipping on the job. And that's just the truth of the matter. We got to step our game up, ladies and gentlemen. Yo, I'm gonna close this here. We could go on and on for days, but I tell y'all what, the babies got to know that they're loved. It's up to us to show them that. If we don't do it, nobody else is. In fact, the other stuff that's coming into their airwaves and their environment and their mind and their thinking is telling them the exact opposite. Y'all ain't worth nothing. You're a bunch of niggas, a bunch of dogs, ain't worth a damn. Are we gonna counter that message? If so, how you gonna do it? It's a united, independent approach, y'all. Let's get it going. Take care, y'all. Have a blessed day and happy new moon.